I'm Chris Ralph, and I'm out here today. We're going to talk a little bit about gold. Have you ever wondered, where does gold come from? How does it get to, from a hole in the ground to maybe a wedding ring in a jewelry store, or maybe a gold coin, or a big old gold bar that some rich guy might invest in? You ever wondered how that happens? Well, I'm going to talk to you today about just that. You see, I brought you out to the middle of nowhere in Nevada, in central Nevada, and that big hole behind me, that's an old gold mine. That actually was very active and produced thousands of ounces of gold back in the 1980s, not the 1800s, the 1980s, okay? So just a few decades ago. Anyway, this mine was a productive mine, and it produced a lot of great gold, and we're going to talk about the process of how that works. Now, back in the day, this mine would have had big trucks and drills that drilled holes, and the miners blasted the rock, and big front end loaders that picked up the rock and put it in trucks, and trucks that took the material out and they put it on what they called heap leaches. And they actually used cyanide to take the gold out of the rock. We're going to talk about the whole process and how that works, and basically the whole idea of how gold goes from a rock in a hole in the ground to like I say, a gold coin or a ring or something like that. Now, back in the day, this would have been a really active pit, but you look behind me, it seems huge, right? I mean, this is a giant pit. You could put a half a mountain in this pit now. But the truth is, this is a dinky, tiny little pit. In fact, this is a drop in the bucket kind of pit. And the fact is that this is the day, this day and age is when giant mines that move hundreds of thousands of tons of rock and move giant amounts of material, and the amount of gold actually in the rock is comparatively small, but they move it in a big way at low cost, and they're able to process it and make money, even with rocks that have only a little tiny bit of gold in them. So come along with me and I'll show you and explain the whole process of how giant scale mining works today, and how gold goes from being in a pit, like the pit behind me, a hole, and the rock, and how it goes from that rock to being, like I say, a gold coin or a wedding ring.
Some people think that modern mining looks like it did 150 years ago, where men use water and wash away mountains of gravel, and whatever mud and debris get washed into streams, it doesn't matter because they're after nuggets that look like this. Bright and shiny gold nuggets with huge value, enough to make anyone get a case of gold fever. And the truth is, there are areas in developing nations around the world where small-scale miners eke out a living on gold, but there's a very real environmental cost to pay. And yet there are millions of individuals in Africa, in Asia, South America, Central America, and other places around the globe where this is the best living that they can eke out, mining for gold and getting a few dollars a day, because there really aren't other jobs available to them. And to find of a nice nugget like this is more than a year's, maybe almost 2 years worth of normal wages for them. And it certainly makes a big difference in their lives. But small-scale miners in developing nations only produce about 10 to 15% of the world's new gold production. The bulk of the new gold is produced in the really big mines. It's these big commercial operations with huge amounts of mechanized equipment and big facilities and many employees. These are the operations that produce the bulk of the world's newly mined gold. The scale of these big open pits can be vast and just incredibly many hundreds of feet deep. And this is the super pit in Australia, in Western Australia, and it's expanding toward the camera. It's getting bigger. And some of these really huge pits have workings that go underground from the bottom of the pit. So they get a certain distance down in the pit and can't go anymore as a pit. And so they drive into the walls and go underground. But how do these giant mines get started? I mean, they cost hundreds of millions to get started. How do they know where to dig? How do they know where the gold is? Geologists will study maps and study the history of an area and the known deposits there and use their knowledge of geology to figure where the best chances of these deposits are going to be located. But then the companies have to spend millions and millions of dollars drilling holes, taking the samples from the drill holes, and then assaying and testing them to just to see whether or not there's really gold there. And if there is gold, well, how much of it? And with these big mines and the huge amounts of capital expenditure, it takes a very, very large deposit to justify the creation of a new mine. And the truth is, although the geologists give it their best guess and really try to use all the science that they can to figure out where these deposits will be, well, the truth is, most of the time, it just doesn't pan out. Only once in a while do they get the kind of results that indicate that they need to be making plans to start up a new mine. The truth is, for years, that we've been closing mines at a faster rate than we've been opening them. We're just not making enough discoveries to keep up with the demand and with the amount of mining that's going on. And when they do make a discovery, usually the gold ore just doesn't look like very much. It doesn't scream, hey, there's lots of gold, look at this. I mean, here is a piece of really good gold ore from Nevada from a series of deposits that have produced well over 50 million ounces of gold. And yet this gold ore doesn't look like much, but yet this is the kind of thing that the big companies mine and make huge amounts of money on. This has a little more than a tenth of an ounce of gold in it, and so at current prices, it's more than $300 a ton, and the cost to mine and mill and process and extract the gold is maybe only around $40 to $50 a ton. And so for every ton of this rock they mine, they're making a couple $100 a ton, and they're mining these rocks by the many thousands of tons per day. To be sure, there is some ore that's produced in some of these mines that just screams, hey, I'm full of gold, like this specimen that's from that huge pit in Western Australia that we looked at a minute ago. And here's a rich pan full of super rich gold ore from the Round Mountain mine in central Nevada. But the truth is, 99% of all the gold ore mined doesn't look like this kind of rich stuff. It looks like the boring stuff I showed you a minute ago. Here's some more of that more typical Carlin ore. The gold in this is there, but it's microscopic. You need a fairly powerful microscope to see the particles of gold that are in this rock. And here's another big chunk of that microscopic gold ore. This big boulder, it doesn't scream or say, hey, I'm gold ore, and that's why it was missed and only discovered in more recent decades. A lot of these microscopic gold ores were just hiding in plain sight, and that's why the old-timers missed them all. And when a worthwhile body of ore is discovered, the company, in order to start a mine, has to buy a whole lot of big, very expensive equipment. And that's why starting a new mine can be $100 million, $200 million, and even more in an investment in equipment and facilities and other processing equipment to extract the gold. It is very expensive, and so they have to have a large deposit that has good value in it in order to start up a new mine. The mines themselves are worked in a series of layers or benches, as they're called in the mining industry, and each succeeding bench is a little smaller than the one before, and so you get this stair-step effect that you can see along the walls of the pit. And the making it a little smaller each time as you go down leaves you with a stable wall for the pit, because the last thing they want to have happen is the wall of the pit to cave in and slide in on the workings below. So they want a stable side, a stable wall, so each bench or layer is a little bit smaller than the previous one. Now in this, you can see on the far side, there's a flat area. A little bit toward the right, there's some vertical pieces of equipment. Those are drills, and they're drilling each bench. They're drilling that bench, drilling holes for blasting. The rock in these pits is hard, and it has to be drilled, and many literally tons of blasting material have to be put down holes and then set off in order to loosen the rock and break it up so that it can be taken away and mined. A large number of holes are drilled, and they're drilled in a regular pattern. And what you see here in the regular pattern, you see the little dark colored lumps where they've drilled a hole. These are the cuttings for the hole. So they drill a hole, and the material that's broken out of the hole, that's removed to form the hole, is left as a little heap next to the hole itself. And every one of these little piles where they've drilled a hole is sampled and tested to see whether what the material that they've drilled is ore or waste. And that determines how the material is handled. And so many of these holes are drilled, and then they're loaded with large amounts of explosive. Each hole has explosive in it, and then they're set off. And the blasts are set off in an identifiable pattern designed to maximize the breakage of the rock. In this photo, you can see the drill holes that are blasting on the right have well gone off, whereas on the far left, they're just getting started, and actually some of these holes haven't even gone off yet on the far left. So it's a pattern that's designed to maximize the breakage of the rock with the explosive that they're using. Now remember that I said that each of the cuttings from each drill hole gets sampled, and they're tested to see how much gold or silver that the rock has in it for each drill hole. And it's based on these assay testings that determines how the rock is handled, whether it's going to be sent to the waste dump, or whether it's low grade ore and going to be handled one way, or better grade of ore and going to be handled another way. The grade control is all done on the sample results of the cuttings from the drill holes. Once the testing is complete and it's been determined what rock where is either waste or good ore or low-grade ore, it's picked up with giant shovels and put into trucks and hauled to the appropriate place. Waste goes to a waste dump. The good ore goes for processing. We'll look at that in a second. But it all goes to be crushed. The good ore and the second-class ore go all to be crushed. The big haul trucks that carry, 50 to 150, even more tons at a time will back up to the crusher and dump in, and they may have rocks several feet in diameter all the way on down. And they dump it into the crusher, and the crushing system processes it. These crushing systems are huge and will often have multiple crushers, a number of screens and conveyors, and will take the rock basically from upwards of, like I say, some as big as several feet in diameter down to less than a half an inch in size. The lower grade ore is then stacked into piles, and these piles are sitting on a thick sheet of plastic that's impervious to liquid, and then they sprinkle on there cyanide, dilute cyanide liquid, water containing a little bit of cyanide, and as it percolates down through these giant heaps, it leaches away the gold and silver. It literally dissolves the gold and silver, and then the liquid sinks down to that impervious layer and comes off. Let me show you. So here's a diagram of what happens. They have, I have the blue up there. It says barren cyanide solution. It's basically water with just a little bit of cyanide added to it. And it's put onto these giant pads of gravel and rock. And it literally is put on with a drip irrigation system in most cases, similar to what you'd use if you were farming a drip irrigation system. And the water goes on there and it percolates down through the pad. And as it percolates down, it dissolves the gold and silver, and it eventually gets down to the impervious pad layer where it's collected and then goes into a storage of gold-bearing cyanide. And then from there, that's the yellow. And then from there, it goes to a gold extraction circuit where they collect the gold out of it. And basically, they add any additional water to make up for evaporation or add any additional cyanide for material that's come out of it. And once it's back up to strength, it goes up to the barren cyanide and then back out onto the pad, and just it's recycled through and the gold is extracted. It's an extremely low cost method of processing ore, and this is part of why they're able to process really low grade ores and get the gold out of them at a profit, because this is such a low cost method of collecting the gold. And these pads, when they reach the end of their useful life, they're literally rinsed with water for upwards of a year, and the water just washes the cyanide fluid out. And then once they're rinsed clean, they're done and ready for reclamation. When they're reclaimed, the edges are smooth and they're replanted with vegetation. And after a few years, you can't hardly even tell that this was a heap leach pad. In the foreground, the area in the foreground that's a little more green, that's a reclaimed heap leach pad. And the hills in the distance are their natural selves. But after a while, the vegetation will grow on them, the sagebrush and all, and you won't even be able to tell that this was a site where they did heap leaching and recovery of gold and silver. Now, concerning the higher grade ore, with the higher grade ore is rich enough that it will pay for the extra cost of additional crushing. The initial crushing down to half an inch for the heap leach, this is lower grade ore, and if you crushed it, you wouldn't get enough extra out of it to pay for the extra crushing and processing. So they process it by the lowest method, the cheapest method possible. Now, by these are called ball mills, these big cylindrical things you see here, and they have inside them a whole bunch of steel balls, like about the size of a cannonball, 4, 5, 6 inches in diameter, and they rotate, and the ore that goes in there, the minus half-inch ore, goes in there. The steel balls roll around and crush that ore down to the size of a fine sand, like a beach sand or something like that. And that way they get to a smaller size, and by crushing the rock to a smaller size, they can get more gold and silver out of it. But because this rock is the better grade, it has the material in it, the gold and silver in it, to pay extra if you will crush it down further. And the ore, once it's crushed down to this fine sand size, is processed in big vats. And the vats have cyanide liquid in them, and they're well stirred, and they have air bubbled through from the bottom, and it keeps the sand and cyanide liquid in suspension, and it has a much better chance for a higher percentage of recovery. The heap leaches typically recover 75 to 90%, maybe even 70 to 90% is a good range for recovery in heap leach. But in a good vat leach, you're talking 95, 97% of the gold that's in the rock is recovered. But it costs more to do the finer crushing and do the vat leaching. And so it is reserved for ores that have enough gold and silver extra in them that this extra processing cost will be more than recovered because the higher grade of the ore. Whether it's from a heap leach or a vat leach, and many mines have both, the final processing of the cyanide liquid is a liquid processing operation with tanks and such, and The liquid is processed to extract the cyanide. A lot of times they use activated carbon, but they also use powdered zinc if you have any significant silver in your cyanide. And so there's various methods, but it really is a lot of it just handling water in big tanks and extracting the gold and silver values out of it. And so after the material is recovered from the cyanide, it's dried out and mixed with some flux materials and melted and poured into bars and buttons. And the final product of the mine is this, a button of impure gold alloy. It's called doré, which is a French word, and it's ready to go to a refiner. Now, actually, I've held a couple of these in my life, and one of the ones I held was about this size. It weighed 40 pounds because gold is just incredibly dense. Now, as far as refining, the mines don't do that. They ship the raw product off to a refinery and to a company that specializes in taking impure gold alloy like this and refining it down to the pure thing. This, though, is probably 80 to 90% pure. It's fairly pure, and there's a lot of gold here, many thousands of dollars, and they produce these all the time in the big mines. So it's specialized refining companies who take the raw gold from the mines and then process them down into bars like this that can either be held for investment or processed into jewelry or whatever carat by mixing, or made into coins. And so this is the final product of the mines.
Hey, I hope you'd enjoyed that slideshow and presentation on where gold actually comes from. I brought you out to another mine today. This is another old mine, a little tiny pit, at least a little tiny pit in the world of gold mines. This is another pit, not very far, not many miles from the one that we showed you at the beginning, because in Nevada there's a lot of gold mines, and there's not only just the old underground mines, but there's the open pits that were active, a lot of them still active, but some, like this one and like the first one, that are long shut down. They operated in the 80s and 90s. This one was a going thing some years ago, but there's still exploration in this area. This, like I say, we're not far from the other pit, and there's still companies out drilling and exploring and finding more gold because, well, we have to keep finding gold in order to keep replenishing our supply. It seems like however much we find, there's never really enough, and the price just seems to go higher and higher because there's always demand for it. And actually, there's a lot of industrial uses as well.
And while it's the big mines that produce the bulk of the production, hey, there are still individuals out there, and not just in third world countries, in the US, Canada, Australia, and a lot of other places, finding gold for themselves. Here's me with a 3/4 ounce nugget that I found a few years ago. At today's prices, that's a $2,500 piece of gold, all in one swoop that I found just in the ground. And this was honestly, this spot was within about 60 or 70 feet of a well-traveled highway. And here's a picture of about 1.8 ounces of gold I found just last summer, just within less than a year. And this gold, at the current price of gold, is almost $6,000 worth. There still is good gold out there to be found by those people who know how to do it. And to impart those skills to you, I wrote a book called Fistful of Gold. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book and about my partners with prospecting and getting prospecting equipment, High Plains Prospectors. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the both of them right now. This is my book, Fistful of Gold. It's an encyclopedia of everything you need to know to go out and find gold for yourself. It distills down my 45 years of experience out in the field prospecting, as well as my degree in mine engineering. It's, like I say, an encyclopedia. There's a lot to it. It's over 250,000 words long, hundreds of pages with hundreds of illustrations, teaching you what you need to know about geology, about mining districts, about techniques of finding gold. It covers metal detectors, sluicing, panning, dry washing, high bankers, you name it, it's covered in there. It talks some about platinum and diamonds, but it's mostly about gold because gold is more widespread. It is not so much a book about where to find gold, but a book about how to find gold. Because even if you have a location where gold was mined in the past and you go out there, well, where should you look to be successful in your prospecting, to find the gold that's there? This is the book that's going to tell you that information. I spent most of 10 years writing this book, so I thought a long time about it. It's got, like I say, lots of information and lots of illustrations, and I've had results from people who bought it. It's available on Amazon, but I recommend buying it through High Plains Prospectors, and I'll put a link in the description for buying this book through them. They have a better price than Amazon, and I have a special deal that I'll tell you a little bit more about, where you can get a 5% discount from the price even with that. On Amazon, the book rates a 4.7 out of 5, which means that of all the people that have bought it, they've been really highly satisfied, and I think you, if you buy my book, will be just as highly satisfied as well. Now let's talk a little bit more about High Plains Prospectors. They're a prospecting shop, a mail order prospecting shop that I've partnered with. The deal is that I can get you a 5% discount, a coupon code, and I'm going to put the code to that right here. It's just Chris Ralph, all caps with no space between Chris and Ralph. You put that in there as a discount code and you'll get 5% off their already really good prices. I think it's a great deal where you win by getting a discount, I get a little percentage of that, and they get new business. So if you need prospecting supplies, High Plains is really the way to go. And I'll put information, like I say, in the description more about how you can work with them, because I'm working with them. They really are great guys, a great company. For even more information, I also have a website, and I'm going to show you my webpage and talk a little bit more about that right now. This is my webpage. It's located at NevadaOutbackGems.com. You can Google it, or I have a link down in the description below. But there's lots of information here, miscellaneous stuff, pictures, some historic information as well, stories. It's got a lot of great fun stuff. You'll probably be interested in it. Now, on all of my YouTube videos, I encourage you guys to ask questions. If you have thoughts, comments, suggestions for things that I ought to look at in my videos, things that you want to find out more about, and I answer 100% of my questions. There's not very many YouTubers out there that answer 100% of their questions. I'm one of the few. And so I will do my best to answer what you have. I mean, I only can write so much. Sometimes the answer is something where I'm going to recommend that you buy the book and read about it. I also ask that you subscribe to my channel, click the bell notification so that every time I come out with a new video, you'll be able to watch it. And like I say, I cover a huge amount of topics. I also have 250 videos that I've already done. And so you can go back through my catalog of videos on YouTube. I'm sure there'll be many videos there that you'll want to take a look at, especially if you have any interest in gold or platinum, diamonds, gemstones, geology, and that sort of stuff. My YouTube site is going to be right up your alley. So I'll see you again real soon. We'll be out in the field and back in the office at the whiteboard, and whether we're looking at gold or platinum, diamonds, gemstones, or other interesting geology, it's going to be fun. You're going to enjoy it, and we'll see you again real soon.